Welcome back, Michael Olabode. I'm super happy to see you again for another one of the interviews we are doing about relationships. And this particular time is about dating and the common mistakes we are making in dating. So that will be like probably a highly interesting topic because there's so many people out there who are looking for love, who are hoping to find the right person and are probably going through the motions of making the same mistakes over and over again. Not attracting the right person or attracting someone who happens to be not the right person. Before we get into this, tell us a little bit more about yourself, Michael. We've been friends for years. You've been both in a really successful business school. You are also like a spiritual seeker who's been traveling back and forth to India, I think 8-9 times by now. You've been teaching spiritual principles and masculine, feminine principles all around the world. Tell us a little bit more about how you have come to be an expert in this field.
Well, first of all, thank you very, very, very much, Henrique, for inviting me back again. It's really awesome to connect with you and spend time with you as usual. My journey was very, very interesting. I grew up with no father and my mother had me when she was 16, when she was 16 years old. So yeah, she had to drop out of high school. And what really happened is I started developing a bit of an interest into how relationships work because I saw my mother go from one relationship to another and didn't really have anything necessarily to show for it, so to speak. And so I really got interested in understanding what's the principles of a good relationship? What does it mean to have a good relationship? And so that set me on a bit of a quest of understanding these things, which helped me to run into actually somebody who would introduce me to an incredible masculine feminine science guru in India. I was so fascinated by learning about that science that I traded my job in commodities for living a very aesthetic life, trading suits for robes, and really learning about the masculine feminine science. People got interested after I started speaking about it and sharing it, and they ended up inviting me to Ghana, Nigeria, New Zealand, Australia, and other countries to share what I was learning in India. And so my life purpose evolved as I started learning more and more about how people can have effective relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And you're such a natural teacher. I mean, we've been working together in different environments for years, and you are such a talented speaker and teacher. So let's get into it. Relationships, dating, the common mistakes we are making. And I guess we're probably more talking to a female audience here, but you probably have some gems right there as well for the guys. So what do you see from the perspective and like the many people you've been talking to? I know you've conducted interviews, you've got an online program out that is all about, increasing your attractiveness and finding the right person. What have you learned about the mistakes we are making and how can we overcome them?
Yeah,
that question, right? That's $1 million question. Let's hear your $1 million answer.
That's like an 8-hour discussion. Okay, so I guess the first thing is this. One of the kind of models that I came across is called the ACC triangle. A stands for attraction, C stands for compatibility, and C stands for commitment. What happens is whenever one of those aspects or factors of healthy relationships are missing, it causes a problem. For example, let's say you have attraction and compatibility, but no commitment, then it's just a fatuous love and it's short term. It's great. There's great affection, great intimacy. It feels like we're going somewhere, but there's no commitment because you
burns hot and it burns you.
There you go. And so therefore you might find that you're in different stages of your life, or maybe you're just in a relationship to mask dealing with the mind or a previous relationship, you name it. Let's say there's attraction and compatibility. Let's say there's attraction and commitment, but there's no compatibility. What happens? It's torturous, right? There's arguments, quarrels, the conflict that you're dealing with last year, January, is still going on today. And what happens is the energy that you're going to use to build a relationship is now simply bridging misunderstandings, right? And so therefore you never really you always feel like you're surviving instead of thriving in a relationship.
It's exhausting.
It's very exhausting and there's always arguments and quarrels. let's say there's commitment and compatibility, but there's no attraction.
Oh,
well,
that's really bad as well.
Yeah, it's like there's not enough spice in
Like
a
you
relationship.
live
Right?
with your own brother or sister, basically, or with your best friend. But yeah, like you could have that with the best friend.
Exactly. And look, the relationship can be functional, but it may not be satisfying or enjoyable.
Yeah,
You see
yeah.
the
And
point?
then
And
you're
so
in your head asking yourself why you're even still here. Much
there
less
you
you
go.
like the person, but there is no relation. I mean, the relationship really. What's the difference between your bestest of best friends and your partner?
Exactly. There's not that specialness.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that when we date someone, we either miss one of these factors, or in some cases we miss two, and we just go in with attraction alone. So social psychologists make the point that if you get into a relationship just based on attraction alone, at best it will last 3 years. By the way, that's at best, right?
With like 3
Generally,
marks.
Generally attraction dies after about 6 months. And so now what you're forced to do is see how you connect on values and things that last.
That's right.
A massive problem that we have is we confuse chemistry with compatibility.
Oh yeah, that's like a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Don't confuse chemistry with compatibility. Yes.
A natural vibe and attraction is something we want, you're right? Yeah. And sometimes when we meet our partners, remember, that butterfly feeling, that adrenaline rush we get, we love it. It's funny because one of my friends who's a doctor said that if we have that adrenaline rush every time we saw our partners, we'd die because the body can't handle all that adrenaline at once. And so
that's where it probably eventually drops as well, and we can't maintain that state. Yeah. But then it feels like you're falling out of love. Actually, you're just falling out of infatuation, but it feels like, where's that thing that felt so good?
Yes. And so if people equate that with the thing that is about a relationship, then they're in for disappointment, because love is more than just a feeling. It's a verb. It's something that you do.
That's right. But how do you bring that up? Like I had this conversation, obviously I'm a coach. Occasionally I come across this stuff. By no means I'm like a qualified relationship coach, that being my main thing. But it comes up, and obviously I've learned a thing or two over the years as well. So we have conversations. Recently, I'm speaking to a client of mine, and she says, well, there is something that this guy is doing that's really not working for me, where I really know in the long run I wouldn't be able to live with that, like him, only getting in touch occasionally. And it's like, how do I bring that up, and how do I put that on the table without scaring him off? How do I have those uncomfortable conversations early on without scaring off the other person?
You actually have to have enough self-esteem and self-confidence that if you are reasonably presenting your expectations and you scare them off, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I ended up saying to her. Like, if he's being put off by that, he's not your guy. Like,
yes.
If he respects you enough, then he will listen, and he will probably appreciate having this kind of mature conversation. If that's not what he's really willing to do, then it's probably better you move on and find the next one. Obviously, then if you have like a really strong attraction to someone that doesn't feel good and you're scared to lose them, but that's actually what made a major difference in my own life, to have that boundary to go like, I love me more. I love me first.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
or sometimes what
you want to have that prize, you have to come around and you have to work for it a bit, not like in this sort of playing games sort of way, but really like, no, I actually really love and value myself, and for you to have a part in my life, there's a few criteria I have and a few boundaries.
Exactly. And really, if you was to like, list your favorite, list your idol person, have you noticed that when it comes to people who love to people please, right, or they just find it difficult to say no, do you realize that it's easier to say no to someone or to say no to something if you have something else to say yes to? And so what you see the point? And so what happens is, if someone invites you out and you go no, it's because you need to study. It's a lot easier than if you say no because you just don't want to hang out with them. You got something to say yes to. So if you have what I like to call an ideal relationship shopping list, where you have a bit of an idea of the type of partner you wish to have, it's a lot easier to say no to it's easier to say no to someone you're dating with who doesn't match that, because you're saying yes to this. And so in a sense, you're kind of committed to this.
And that's exactly what I did.
idea.
That made all the difference after years of being single. Like when I committed to hold that place next to me free for the right person and be willing to walk away from anything that wasn't that, then that person showed up. At least the person who at this point in time I consider to be that person. Right?
Sounds good.
And that was like, yes, being willing to say no to what's not right and bring up the uncomfortable things early on in the relationship. Because what also happens, and you might want to go into that a little bit as well, is that when, especially as a female, if we give ourselves too quickly, too early in a relationship and get emotionally attached, then we will bend and negotiate, and we will kind of put our boundaries second. We'll kind of try to make that person fit our ideal scenario rather than still having this critical view of assessing whether they are right for us. So like having those conversations before we get too emotionally attached.
Yes, because once you are emotionally connected, then see, a lot of people, the reason why they leave a relationship are the red flags they ignored in the first place. They're the things that they ignored in the first place with their connection. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person who they're dealing with is wrong or bad. It just means that what they were kind of providing or putting on the table doesn't work for them.
It's not compatible. That's
it's not compatible. Yeah. And so if we ignore those red flags or things that are not compatible, they end up becoming the reasons why we leave later. When we hide ourselves or hide our needs, it doesn't actually matter how much we hide it, they will come up eventually. It's kind of like a pressure cooker without a valve, right? If you have a pressure cooker without a valve, it's just a matter of time before it kind of steams and explodes. So most people, they try to hide their needs just because they want to attract a certain person or not be single. But there's a whole list of inappropriate reasons to enter a relationship. And one of them is simply because you don't want to be single.
Yeah.
Because as soon as that would mean that it would indicate that a person is only valuable to you as long as they make you feel good, or that you're not single. And as soon as someone else can fulfill that better than that person, you're going to leave them. It's going to be a lot of heartache, or vice versa. It leaves us feeling very insecure and sad. But here's another interesting thing that can happen with dating. Another inappropriate reason to enter a relationship is we want all the benefits of being single and we want all the benefits of being in a relationship.
If that was possible, I'd totally go for that. No.
It's like, we'll go for everything. You know?
Really
it's like, if we have all the benefits of being the employee and being the employer, why not go for it? You know, so that's what happens. And so what happens is this: what's the benefits of being single? You can travel when you want. You can spend your money how you want without consulting. You've got your own space, your own time. You can make your own agenda.
You don't have to accommodate someone else's needs and whims and etc. Exactly. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. But what's the benefits of being in a relationship? You have someone who can support you, someone who can, someone you can share with your experiences with, someone you can discharge, bounce things off
Physical
of, do
connection.
things.
Let's be honest and real. It's a very good reason too.
Yeah. And so if you want the benefits of both the relationship and being single, we have a problem because each status has its own price to pay. So if I text someone when I want, but don't necessarily respond when they need, that becomes an issue. If I do something that is like being single, but I'm in a relationship, that becomes an issue. And so that's another inappropriate reason why people enter relationships. And there's something that can create obstacles in their dating experience as well.
Exactly. And another one of those conversations to be had early on is like, what is it that you are actually looking for? And for me, at some point, it became really clear that I'm not willing to enter anything less than something that has the potential to grow into a lifelong commitment. Like I know that a lot of people are kind of almost out of a desire to not be alone, entering these friends with benefits sort of scenarios. And it's well understandable why. I don't personally have any issue with that if that's really what you're seeking. The problem is that a lot of women particularly hope that this is going to evolve over time into something more. And that kind of just doesn't happen usually. And again, it's because we don't dare to speak our truth. We don't dare to express what we truly want and need. And then as it goes on, our feelings deepen, our attachment grows. And then we're incredibly hurt by the other person not wanting us, when in actual fact, they've probably been honest and straightforward about it from the get-go. Just we weren't willing and able to hear that.
Got it. And really, like, let's ask this question. Why is it important that someone is honest with themselves in the beginning of the dating? The reason why is because it actually gives a person an opportunity to love you. When you put up a mask,
Nice.
People fall in love with the mask. They don't fall in love with the actor.
That's right.
So if you always put up a show of who you are, you don't give a person an opportunity to love you for who you are, which is funny because we want to be loved for who we are, not what we look like or how beautiful our body is or how much skills we have. But if we keep the mask up, people end up loving the skills and the body and the beauty and the attributes and not the real us. And so you don't give an opportunity for someone to date you. You give them an opportunity to date and act. But if they wanted to do that,
and that becomes so exhausting to keep up. That's what I've said to people many times as well. It's like, if you put yourself out there as not fully you, you'll have to keep playing that game in the long run. How bloody exhausting is it? I'd much rather be with someone who appreciates me for me and who is willing to see me for who I am and still wants that. And I'd rather keep searching for another few years if I needed to, than to have to keep up and act and be something that I'm not.
100%. And it's funny because in some people who study relationships from the East, they make the point that you can't keep that act up more than 3 years.
Yeah, that's probably the problem with that infatuation phase, right?
Yeah, it's interesting,
that's
right?
still new and shiny, that kind of works. At some point you just run out of energy, and then the real thing comes up. It's like, hey, I did not sign up for that.
Yeah, exactly. Look, here's a really easy standard of example. I mean, let's say that you grew up with pets. You always had pets around. It was just a value for you to have some pet to look after, a cat or dog, etc. You're with a partner. Oh, they're beautiful. They're really they're funny. They make me feel good about themselves. 6 months goes, 12 months goes, 8 months goes. You decide, okay, maybe we can move in. And you then discuss pets. And all of a sudden, your partner's either allergic to a type of pet that you love or just doesn't want pets. Now, it might sound very simple, straightforward, but it's often the little things that break up a relationship, not the big things. So if you can't have a simple and honest discussion about something that is non-compromisable to you,
totally,
you can't have a relationship, because there's some things about you in your life that you can compromise and adapt with, that's fine. But there's a lot of things in your life that you can't actually compromise them, because that is part of your own core personality. It's part of your own core values. A value is something that you hold as important, that you depend on, and not having that, it's like, it feels like death, right?
Absolutely. And then I'd much rather, and this took me years to come to that conclusion, I would much rather walk away from something early on before it like kind of builds up into something bigger and then hurts more if it doesn't work out. If and when I realize that certain fundamental points don't match up. And I mean, that's not easy, right? Because obviously, like, the longer you're together, you're learning this, you appreciate the person probably for a lot of things. But if something like, for example, if somebody wants kids and I'm not in that frame of mind, that's probably not going to change. And that would be, for example, from the masculine perspective, really unfair to string someone who really wants kids along if they don't want, like for 3, 5, 10 years. And I've met women like this who've been with men who they absolutely love and adore, great relationships, but the female wants a child and the guy keeps going like, kind of, no, not really, no, I don't want, maybe later, but kind of really not. And then it's 10 years later and the biological clock is ticking, and then they start over at maybe 35 or 40. What a heartbreak. Better to be honest about this very early on in the relationship and let it go, move on, try to find the person who that's possible with. It's easy to say that when you're not in the situation, much, much harder to do it when you're in it. Definitely. But the question is, how much more is it going to hurt later?
That's also true.
if we don't make that call right now. Let's move on. Let's keep talking about more dating mistakes, because you probably got a whole bag of them, right?
Yeah. And it's so nice that you've been able to honor this section of being honest. And there's a kind of caveat I wanted to share here. It's also important that you're honest without being arrogant. So you're just being honest.
What's an example of that? Like where would you see that someone would be arrogant about it?
Okay, I need you to have more spiritual discussions with me, and the conversations I have with you, they're not deep enough. I need them to be deeper. It's honest,
yeah,
but it's important that when you share your honesty, you don't make the person feel insecure about who they are as a person. Because sometimes people may not.
I've been on the receiving end of that at some point in my life.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, because it also brings up that resistance. Actually, when you're on the receiving end, you basically almost don't want to comply with that anymore.
Yeah. And it just, the idea is that when you're honest and open with your needs, you're doing it from a platform of, this is what I need, rather than you're incompetent or you're inadequate or you're insufficient. And that's something that you want to not necessarily do in a dating. So let's be honest with people, but not leave them feeling terrible about them as a person, because that can also be very
that interesting question. Something I've come across not so long ago. How do you deal with when something is being presented to you, like, I need you to be a certain way, I need you to be this, I need you to be that, and that's something that you kind of want but kind of don't? Like, what's the right thing to do there? Is it like giving in, reconsidering, trying to push ourselves? Or is it to then also, there's probably no black and white answer here, but, or is it able to be like, no, this is my truth, I'm not changing?
Okay, it's a good question. And the way we can kind of address that is just to zoom out a bit,
bigger picture.
Yeah. What's the purpose of a relationship?
Oh, nice. That is a good question in that context.
What's the purpose of a relationship? And everyone can set their own purposes, and the reason why I want to share this is just to go a little bit into the philosophy, is that when you can't say something's useless or useful, good or bad, right or wrong, appropriate or inappropriate, unless you actually define the purpose. For example, I have a phone and it's fantastic for technological communications, but for, let's say, I don't know, eating, it's not viable. You need to use a fork or a knife. So you can't say something's useless, useful, good, bad, without defining the purpose of it. So what's the purpose of a relationship? And one definition that I came across of a purpose of a relationship is to help your mind become more peaceful than you would be if you were single, which can help you gain clarity and perspective on who you are as a person.
Wow, so that's interesting. I don't think I've ever come across that. That's really, can you say that again, just to really take that in?
Yeah, I'll just define it. So the purpose of a relationship is to help your mind to become more peaceful. When your mind's peaceful, it increases your clarity and the perspective on who you are as a person. In other words, a relationship is supposed to set a foundation by which your mind is free or relatively free from anxiety and peaceful and feeling calm and equipoised. And that foundation is supposed to help you understand yourself and help you pursue who you are as a person more. It helps you on that path of self-realization.
Man, and I think for very few people in percentages, that's the actual reality they are living in their relationships. If you look at our divorce rates and things like this, I think there's often more anxiety and drama within a relationship than it is outside of them. Yes. So that's almost like kind of sad.
Yeah.
Without wallowing on that, but it just like to take this into perspective. Sure. I really like the definition though. Keep going.
It's great that you're saying, and you're right. Some studies in America mention that if a relationship is not healthy, it's supposed to have such a damaging effect. It's supposed to have quite a damaging effect, almost equivalent to smoking. I think it was something like 30 cigarettes a day, because of the physiological stress, psychological
totally relatable.
Stress, like that. It's like, you might as well just puff all day. Anyway,
yeah.
So now let's go into you might have to remind me of that conflict or question he was asking. Or you can kind of relate this to anything. The purpose of relationship. Okay, mind peaceful, help me meditate, help me understand myself properly. Does this person, okay, about changes that you were saying. If I need this person to change and I'm trying to push them to change, is that going to help my mind be more peaceful and gain more clarity and perspective of myself? Or if this person is who he is or who she is, and they're doing what they're doing, they're living their lifestyle, is this person and being in connection with this person allowing my mind to become more peaceful, which sets a foundation for me to understand myself properly and also serve in that capacity? If the answer to the question is yes, it is helping, great. And is it helping them also? If it's not helping, it means that you're not actually, according to that definition, you're not actually fulfilling the deepest purpose of a relationship. And so you're going to feel dissatisfied on some level. And so that's why it's important to consider, if this person didn't change or didn't grow, would I still be fairly satisfied, peaceful, and happy in their presence? Because we can't control someone's growth, but we can take their growth as a bonus, as a way that they're adding to the relationship. But if we're not happy with their core personality and we're not happy with ourselves, that's also a problem. That's just a big thing. We have to be, see, we're looking for the ideal person, but we need to be the ideal person, right? And that doesn't mean being
the
perfect.
biggest difference. Like, you know how one of the exercises like coaches give you or so is like, write down the list of your ideal person. Like, what are the attributes, what are the values, etc., that you're looking for? Somebody gave me probably about not even a year ago the task, and I loved it. Who do you want to be within the relationship that you have with that person? Like, if you already were with your ideal partner, how would you want to show up in that relationship? Who would you want to be? That was such a game changer, because it also helped me to then see, okay, I would have to step up in this area, I would have to step up in that area. Well, I can already kind of step it up a notch in some areas of my life and be that person, whether or not that other person is here already. And as you are growing yourself into the person you would choose to be, obviously that is one of the elements that makes you ready for when the person actually arrives.
100%, yeah. And remember, even if the right person arrives, if you're bored with yourself, you are not going to have a great relationship, because you need to have a great relationship with yourself in order to have a relationship with someone else.
Not expect them to make it all amazing,
make it all happen, right? I had one of my XYTT students, and she was in a marriage, and she mentioned at a certain point, her husband came to her and said, I cannot make you happy. You have to find the happiness within yourself, and I can simply add to it. I love that. That's amazing. I can't make you happy.
On him for having that awareness and being able to put up that boundaries. It's not my job. And yes, for males, often, I mean, we've discussed this in previous conversations. For you guys, it is very important to feel like you are able to make that person happy. But if no matter what you do, that woman or that partner just cannot be happy, it's like trying to fill an empty well. It's like there's a bucket without, like a bottom in it, where you just pour and pour and pour and nothing sticks. So ultimately, when we're really true to ourselves, we have to be able to make ourselves happy. And in some ways, I've had that conversation with a client recently, that can be really tricky, because certain things, like, for example, physical satisfaction, you need well, you don't technically, but really, when to really enjoy it, you need a partner for that. But as much as possible, in as many areas as possible, look to satisfy yourself. At the same time, though, I want to just throw this in the mix, because this is interesting as well. As a woman, when we are completely, entirely self-satisfied and we don't at all need anyone, that can be also a bit of a turn-off for guys, because we're coming off so confident, we're coming off so self-sufficient, that sometimes guys don't really know, like, well, what you want with me.
I'm gonna throw something in the mix that you threw into the mix with that one.
Let's just keep it that way.
A woman who is self-satisfied, I'm just taking an example that you mentioned, does not attract a boy in a man's body. She attracts a gentleman.
Or you'd hope that there's a
She
lot of
attract,
freaking boys
yeah,
out there.
that's the thing. But she, in other words, it's not her being self-satisfied and confident and happy and all of that. It actually attracts a gentleman. In other words, she's putting off people who are not at the level to provide the intellectual, spiritual, physical, and emotional satisfaction she's looking for. But it means that the person who can provide that is also very special in themselves. In other words, she's self-satisfied, but if she connects with someone who's even more self-satisfied, which means that they're more in their flow, they're more in their purpose, they're really connected. And these guys come together, not out of need, but out of want, right?
Yeah.
Out of desire.
Adding
that makes a very powerful, adding
lives.
quality. That makes a very powerful relationship. And that's the standard that we're looking to get to. When you're hungry, right? When you're really, really, really hungry and you're walking down the street, you can't think much about anything else until you get some food. So you'll be looking at different ways to satisfy your hunger, you know, whatever kind of takeaway shop or whatever. In a similar way, if we have a hungry need, we have a hungry need for attention, a hungry need for affection, a hungry need for protection, a hungry need for someone's satisfaction, a hungry need to feel like we're rescuing or serving someone.
And something.
We can't.
And we settle. That's the problem. We settle for less.
We settle. And so we may be functioning together, but it's not a relationship, because what can happen is two people come together. Bhattacharya Swami describes that two people come together and it's like mutual thieves coming together. They're simply coming to take or steal something from the other person that they need. Attention, time, affection, presence, rather than coming to give.
Yeah, and kind so of sucking it out of the other person.
Yes,
and we all have been in relationships like that. It is not a nice place to be.
Exactly. And so what the emphasis of dating should now manifest or look like is, okay, what is it I can give? And you also alluded to it. What is it I can be? Here's an interesting question I like to ask people. It's kind of inspired by Elaine de Botton, who gives an incredible seminar lecture called How to Not Marry the Wrong Person.
I have seen that. And
you've seen it, yeah?
Basically that we will always marry the wrong person.
Yeah.
I love that talk.
And he mentions this. He says, we're not looking to be perfect. We're looking simply to be good enough. You'll never be a perfect mother. You're simply looking to be good enough. You'll never be a perfect father. You're simply looking to be good enough. And you'll never be a perfect husband or wife or partner, but you're simply looking to be good enough. And so we're also looking for someone else to be good enough, because you may in your lifetime experience multiple people who you can kind of, settle with or whatever, but it's actually that you're looking to try to be satisfied with the partner who you do choose. And so a question that I love to ask to help people to step up their game, especially in dating, is if you translated your ex's feedback into just a lesson for you to learn, what would it be? In other words, like this.
Yes.
Let's say you have an ex and in the argument, it's like, you don't listen, you're lazy, you don't treat me with respect.
You don't care.
You don't care. If you just took out all the emotion and just translated that into a lesson for you, what would that be? So now you've got things to feed back on, because it's the person who knows you the most. They're the ones that are going to love you the most, also not like you the most, but they're going to be the ones who can give you the most feedback. So if you just translate everything your ex ever told you in an argument just to the lesson, what would it be? Here's another question.
And can I
go. Please.
This allows us as well in some way to appreciate the exes, especially the ones that have hurt us the most. Because often it's like we get out of relationships and with resentment, and we're still wallowing in that like a year, 5 years, 10 years later. When you look at it from this perspective, you can honor them for the gifts they have given you, for the things they have taught you, if you are willing to take the lessons. And then no matter what happened, it will actually add value to your future by taking those lessons on. And that is part of letting go and forgiving as well. That's just on a side note. You were keeping going with this.
100%.
We have to watch our time a little bit, maybe like another 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, because I didn't even check when we started. Yeah, it's true. And it allows us to step into a new version of ourselves that we otherwise wouldn't if we just kind of dismiss the ex's feedback as just their own stuff, or not a reflection
and we
of
keep
ourselves.
dating the same situation with different faces. Have you ever caught yourself doing that? You're
That
going
is
from
a whole
relationship to
other
relationship,
podcast.
and it's the same issue. And the
Yeah,
person changes, but kind of,
100%.
and this is what teaches you that there is some lesson in there that
Yeah,
we haven't learned
yeah.
yet.
That is a whole, to unlock that, Henrika, we need to have a third conversation. That's a whole nother
It's like a
podcast.
2-hour seminar
Because
or something.
it's not just you change countries, it's the same person. You change faces, it's the same person. You change races, it's the same person. The essence, it's the same lesson that comes through.
Exactly.
Just they happen to be black or white or blonde or red or whatever it is. It's the same lesson. If we don't pick up the lesson, it doesn't matter what country, what nationality, what location, what dating technique, how many podcasts you listen to, you'll still be the same thing. And so what you find is real dating, and the power of dating starts with upgrading our attraction, and upgrading our attraction starts with basically taking responsibility for those flaws, trying to work on that. And that's what's actually creating attraction. I'll share with you another question that I hope to reflect on. That is, let me just see if I can remember it. That's it. What character flaw do you have that you need to drop in order to guarantee the success of your next relationship?
Oh God!
Like, what is a character flaw? What's something about you that you know?
Just one.
We say one because it's an icebreaker, and we don't want to traumatize anyone. What character flaws do you have in that you have to drop or work on? Work on or drop in order to guarantee the success of your next relationship.
Nice. That is
could be
like
anything. That
one
could be
big question.
Yeah. And I'll share something.
But what I love it brings it back to your own responsibility, rather than pointing the fingers and going, he did this, she did that, she said this, she said this.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And something that I wanted to work on is there's a lot of people who, when their cortisol levels rise to the point of stress or anger, upset, they will burst out. They'll be violent. They'll attack back, or they may not necessarily know what to do, or they may undercut, back chat. For me, for some people, including me, it would be withdrawal. And one of the horsemen of the apocalypse is called stonewalling. Stonewalling is like a self-protection device or mechanism where, rather than being detached, you become indifferent, and it's like the anger or the annoyance turns inward, and so it becomes very difficult for people to connect and for you to receive and receive. And what you do is you shut off the attempts to make repairs, and you shut off the attempts to receive repairs to that relationship, right?
So, can I share something in that context, because that came up for me earlier. Yeah. Here it fits in again, is that instead of aiming for perfection and trying to be the perfect person or find the perfect person, what I've come to conclude just personally for myself is that I don't need perfect. In fact, perfect would stress me out, because if I feel the other person is trying to be perfect, then it's like there's a lot of expectations on me to match that. But my version of perfection is the willingness to speak to each other, to really hear each other, and then to work things out with each other and grow together. That's my standard for perfection. It's like, if you are playing along with me, not you, if you are playing along with me and you are willing to not walk away but stay, or walk away but come back, and if you are willing to really wrangle with me and wrestle with me, but in order for the relationship to grow, like basically there's me and my needs, there's you and your needs, and in the middle is this thing called the relationship that we both nurture and contribute to and try to grow and bring from a little plant and to something big and beautiful. Someone who's willing to farm a relationship with me instead of just walking away on a whim, or go and share blame and stuff. And I think that's, for me, always been the one. Like, I don't deal well with, for example, someone stonewalling. If they're not willing to come to the party and sort things out with me, that's something where I know I'm walking away from it, because I can't do the work by myself.
100%. And I can't necessarily remember all the horsemen, but stonewalling and also criticizing, blaming.
I think that's more us women nagging. Yeah.
It's all ways of communicating. You're not good enough. You're not, and like, you're not worthy of love. You need to change before you can be happy. But not even that. you can change, you need to change before I can change. And so it's shifting on that responsibility, that power. And it's funny because whenever Jamin, the 1 Minute Coach, mentions a point that whenever you need something from someone, you give them the power to dictate your happiness.
Yeah, in order for like either they choose to give it or they choose not to.
Yes. Whereas what happens is with so criticizing, blaming, stonewalling, what that does is it says, this person needs to change before I change. And so one of the things I wanted to kind of work on, especially with my character flaws, is that. And so now whenever there's a conflict, I have to anchor myself. I will sit, I'll do the pranayama, I'll do the breathing, I'll meditate and try not necessarily to take anything personally and sit with them for days or hours or months, whatever it takes, in order to solve the conflict and come to a situation and a solution that works for them, works for me, but also leaves them feeling happy, refreshed, and more evolved, and leaves me feeling happy, refreshed, and more evolved as well.
And to add so much strength to the relationship. I know that, like, I used to have the concept of, if we are fighting, that means our relationship isn't good. The truth is, every time I'm having conflict and I'm moving through it together with the person, through the discomfort, and come out on the other side, it actually shows me that the relationship is stronger than it was before, because we've been able to master this. And we've been able to stick through this together and work on it together and find a solution. That over time builds my trust, because, like, for me, trust and trusting in relationships, that's one of my challenges that I am working on. And to see that I don't have to run away from the discomfort or kind of dismiss the whole relationship, but stick with it and learn and grow, and also see that we can do that together. So that gives me the trust that if we can do that this time, and we've done maybe a month ago, we'll also be able to do that again in the future. Now, 100%. Timing wise, where this is like, could go on for hours. It's like, I love this kind of conversation, but just tell people if they want to learn more. I think a lot of what we've discussed today is basically like the highlights, or some of the highlights out of the relationship course that you're offering, right? Like the online course that you have. Tell people a little bit, just in two or three bullet points, about what it is that you do and how you can support them in getting themselves ready for that relationship and out of that unsatisfactory dating experience.
Sounds brilliant. I think one of the best things to do is to take relationship study seriously. We spend 3 years studying for 5 years for dentistry, 5 years for optometry, 7 years for psychology, but we don't spend any years studying relationships.
School doesn't teach it.
Yeah, and that's our most important kind of factor for our happiness. So the spiritual science of attraction, a course that I've developed, helps you to sequentially deal with the different obstacles to attraction, breaks the common mistakes that people make in dating, and help you to position yourself to attract the perfect person. For example, it goes through things like the purpose of a relationship, inappropriate reason-centered relationship. We look a little bit about attachment theory, the 6 primary masculine principles, the 7 primary feminine principles, the essential needs of the masculine and feminine, different qualities you should look for in a partner, the power of criticism, cohabitating, monogamy, polygamy and polyamory, and the whole philosophy behind those, the sex timeline, and the role of compatibility test, attraction vision boards. And we also give you mantras to help you upgrade your attraction as well. So it's got a whole host of multiple different, things and tools and concepts that you can apply to help you attract the ideal partner.
Yeah. And I like that you have this unique twist on those things, because it mixes the whole topic, not just with your standard dating advice, but also with really deep spiritual principles who are ancient. And I love that this is like a very different angle. Like, I've found it personally really interesting to, obviously over the years as friends, speak to each other and get your perspective on things. Thank you so much for your time. Again, I'm sure we're going to have more conversations, because I'm sure people are going to love watch you and hear what you have to say. And yes, thank you so much. We are going to leave, for the audience, we're going to leave links to Michael's website in the comment section, some more information as well if you want. If you're happy to, please leave comments on this video. Share with us your thoughts and share with us the ideas that you have. Also, what else you would like to hear from a relationship expert like Michael. And as always, of course, if you like our videos, if you like this channel, please follow the channel so that you keep yourself updated with new upcoming content that we're producing. Thank you so much, and see you again soon, Michael.
Oh, thank you very much. Take care.